formality's sake, I'm Sonny Croston, and I'm going to be talking about the problem with perfectionism in our own culture. Western culture in general puts people's value in their productivity, how much work they can do, how much money they can make, how they can help us, and how they can help society as a whole. This is especially reinforced by perceived conditional love at a young age. If a kid failed a test, did bad in a sports game, got in trouble at school, did that affect the parents' or guardian's affection of the kid? Because of material success's effect on our emotions and a sense of purpose, this culture has also affected modern Christianity and how we view purity and sin. One common coping mechanism of this is self-oriented perfectionism. Now, coping mechanisms on their own are totally fine. In fact, they can be healthy when dealing with negative emotions and traumatic events. However, when this turns into an addiction of one's self-improvement, it becomes an issue. A study by the American Psychological Association took 40,000 college students from the UK, Canada, and America over 1989 to 2016. Over this gap, they saw a proportion of people who exhibited traits of perfectionism rose by over 33%. The same study linked self-oriented perfectionism with clinical depression, eating disorders, and premature death among the same college students. Another study backed this up, finding that over one half of the people that died by suicide were described by their family members as perfectionists, and over 70% of the students who died by suicide were said to hold themselves to exceedingly high standards. Now, when we think of perfectionism, we often think of it as a character trait. We think of like the Enneagram 1 is a perfectionist. But psychologists actually say it's a psychological problem. This comes from believing your value comes from your performance automatically leads to a culture where you value sacrifice for material gain. We often romanticize people who give up emotional and personal aspects of their lives for success at their career or at their sport. Think about all the stories we hear about Kobe Bryant waking up at 3 a.m. to go and practice his shot, when in reality he was sacrificing time with his family and overall social life. This same praise creates an association between your success and your identity, causing your self-worth to be based on that same performance. This also means that when the performance of the perfectionist fails, their own self-worth and identity fails too. As humans, we also have an effective forecasting problem. Now, effective forecasting is a psychological term that we use to describe how we think we're going to feel in a certain situation. If I get this job or if I get this reward, I'll feel this way. But we actually find that we think that material conditions will bring higher highs and lower lows than they really do. We see this when athletes win championships or win gold medals. They're often not as satisfied as they think they would be. And they often talk about how they're gonna try to do it again next year, thinking that that'll bring the same satisfaction that they did in this one. Think about the Kansas City Chiefs winning the Super Bowl this year. As they accepted the Lombardi Trophy, they were already talking about how they were gonna win it again next year. They were not satisfied with this success. This is a quote from Daniel Gilbert of Harvard Psychology, saying that we think money will bring lots of happiness for a long time, and it actually brings little happiness for a short time. And this quote by Dimitrios Testaris, a clinical psychologist, says, "We predict that becoming successful will make us happy, and we make sacrifices to become successful. However, success does not lead to sustained happiness." Now, when your only purpose is becoming perfect, we may see material gains. Then we credit the drive of perfectionism with our own success, afraid that without that drive, we wouldn't be this successful. This creates a vicious cycle where we're trying to be perfect, and then whenever we do succeed, we blame that perfectness for our success. However, author and psychologist Adam Grant says that perfectionism doesn't actually correlate with any material success or higher grades in school. It's the willingness and sacrifice to put in effort that brings success. I like to use the analogy of a house on fire. When your house is on fire, no one just stands in the house. You're either running out of the house to save yourself, or you're running back in to save someone. This self-perfectionist think of life. They can't just stand still and be loved. This gives them a direction. Perfectionism gives us a line to run on, but when we're running on it, we miss all the other lines of life. They take away all options. When a perfectionist actually stops running on that line, it seems like life has stopped and life is going to end. But in reality, their life has just begun. But how does this affect the Bible? Christianity actually struggles with a lot of the same problems as perfectionists do. We idolize our own sexual purity, try to portray ourselves as pure and as holy as possible, shaming sin and treating sin as a blemish on our own souls, when in fact it's actually just a separation from our relationship with God. It doesn't make him love us any less than he did before. We also fall into the trap of trying to earn God's love and earn our way into heaven. We do this by trying to get good deeds and do better things for those around us, but in reality, we miss the entire point of the gospel. And this directly contradicts Paul in Ephesians 2:8-9, where it says, "By grace you have been saved through faith. And it is not your own doing, it is the gift of God, not as a result of works, so that no one will boast." Now we also might say, well, self-improvement is trying to become more Christ-like. But when we look in the Bible to try to find virtuousness, we look at like the fruits of the Spirit: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Okay. But these are all outward-facing actions. They're not things about us that we're doing to ourselves. It's about how we are treating and loving others. It's especially hard to look at this in a world where all aspects of our life, we are told to be people who take ownership of our action and our own success. We're told that God helps those who help themselves. Now, the very core of Christianity is that we can do nothing apart from God, which is the exact opposite of this whole self-improvement mindset. As a child, I often put a lot of pressure on myself and how I performed. Whether it was in my own grades, or on the court, or in my social life, I always felt like I had to prove my worth to the ones I cared about. However, I've come to understand that this is only a trap. I do a lot of things because I think they're necessary for me to become the best person I can be, but in that, I'm actually not becoming who I am. In doing that, I'm actually losing myself and becoming the world. Through my parents, my pastors, and my sterling teachers, I've gradually stopped finding my purpose, improving myself, and found my identity in God. Perfectionism is a growing problem in our society. Due to our emphasis on productivity, catapulted by our view of material success, giving us emotional fulfillment, and finding purpose in material things, perfectionism is a serious problem. It is a search for identity and self-worth in the wrong place, in our own abilities and in our own actions. The Bible teaches us acceptance is unconditional, and our self-worth only comes from God. Thank you. Yes.
So I want to hear about you. So
Okay.
how does this parallel or affect you or your journey, or has it?
Okay, so yes, throughout my life, I hadn't really had any situation where I've been challenged with my own fall, if that makes any sense. I sinned in day-to-day life, but I never sinned in a way where I felt unredeemable to God. And then that happened at some point last year where I truly felt like I was in that relationship with God. I truly failed him. I had gone to my deepest point. And then coming out of that and realizing that I can't earn that was really instrumental for me. And that's where kind of this whole thing began, where I was looking at my actions and figuring out that I'm not doing this because it's actually who I am. I'm doing this because it's who I think I need to be and who the best version of me that I imagined is. And then just kind of realizing that that isn't who God wants me to be. God just wants me to be myself was really instrumental in my step in my relationship and my faith. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Oh, yes.
So I always sin and fall short of the glory of God. So no one's perfect. You're talking about not striving for perfection, but where do you maybe draw a line between trying to do your best versus trying to be perfect?
So I think that perfectionism in that way is almost a sense of control, and that you're trying to control the outcome. Whereas I think trying your best is just doing what you think is right and trying your hardest and realizing that the outcome isn't determined by that. So I think where someone is just trying to try their best, but put in all this effort, and then if it like doesn't end up working out, realizing that it was God's plan to not work out, whereas the perfectionist would be like, if I was just a little bit more perfect, it would have worked out my way. Yeah.
That's good. Good answer.
Sterling, right?
Did you find in your research that the people who strive to be perfectionists, like you've been talking about, that they have a harder time finding that deep, intimate relationship with God?
So that's kind of a hard thing to quantify through statistics. I would say that overall, your relationship with God is determined on like how humble you are and how you're willing to submit to God in that way. So I would say that there's definitely probably a correlation there, but I don't know how you would statistically like match that up. I don't think there's like a statistical way to match your relationship with God. Yeah.
Like,
Did you come across in your research any correlation between the differences between perfectionism and ambition?
So that talks, so I'm granted this study where he's talking about perfectionism and perfectionistic traits in correlation with overall academic success. And there's not actually a correlation there. The correlation is between the student's ability to like persevere and like study and like time and the actual success. So if the perfectionism is an addiction to the point where it's making kids do unhealthy amounts of studying, then it does. Working extra time at your job, you should be working. That will correlate to success, but it's not the actual perfectionism, it's the unhealthy obsession.
So it's that neurotic element
Exactly.
that takes it out of a healthy dose of consistent effort that is healthy for us, and takes it to a state where it becomes obsessive, a line, I think. Is what
Exactly.
it's called.
And then we as a culture glorify that obsession.
Very good, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, Sunny.